अनिष्ठोपि दविष्ठोपि तथा अत्यंतमसन्नपि प्रत्यक्ष इव येनार्थस्तस्मै शब्दात्मने नमः. Friends, it is the 27th of March 2021 today, the third death anniversary of Professor Madhukar Keshav Dhavalikar, and this is being observed by the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute and the Brihanmaharashtra Prachyavidya Parishad. Professor Dhavalikar was a trustee of the Bhandarkar Institute from 1987 to 2013, and he was the president of the Brihanmaharashtra Prachyavidya Parishad from 1998 till his demise. And his colleague, Professor Padayya, is the one who is going to pay a rich tribute, academic tribute, to the memory of Professor Dhavalikar. So I welcome you all on this occasion. I also welcome Professor Padayya. And now, after me, it will be Professor Ganesh Umakanta Thite, the president of the Brihanmaharashtra Prachyavidya Parishad and the general editor of the Mahabharata Cultural Index project at the Bhandarkar Institute. He will do the introduction. Then it will be Professor Pramod Zogalekar, a retired professor of the Deccan College and director of the academic development program at the Bhandarkar Institute and treasurer of the Brihanmaharashtra Prachyavidya Parishad. He will introduce Professor Padayya, and then it will be Professor Padayya's speech. So I thank all of you for attending this session, and I also thank NYANSA, the agency who are looking after the IT initiatives of the Bhandarkar Institute, for their collaboration in this joint effort of the Bhandarkar Institute and the Brihanmaharashtra Prachyavidya Parishad. I am thankful to Professor Padayya for accepting our invitation to speak on Professor Dhawalikar's contribution, and I thank him in advance for this lecture. Now it will be Professor Thite.
Friends, today we are going to hear a lecture given by Padma Shri Dr. Paddayya in memory of Dr. M.K. Dhavalikar. This program is being arranged by Brihanmaharashtra Prachyavidya Parishad as a kind of special program in memory of Dr. M.K. Dhavalikar, and it is the third anniversary, death anniversary of Dr. Dhavalikar. Brihanmaharashtra Prachyavidya Parishad is about 25 years old institute. Its main function is to organize sessions of Oriental conferences in various parts of Maharashtra and outside Maharashtra. It is organizing such conferences every alternate year for last more than 25 years. Now, as a kind of special activity, today this lecture of Dr. Paddayya is organized. Dr. Dhavalikar was the president of Brihanmaharashtra Prachyavidya Parishad for more than 10 years, and as is well known, he was a great archaeologist interested in all the branches of archaeology. And now Dr. Paddayya will speak about different aspects of Dhawalikar's activity, academic as well as administrative. He was the director of Deccan College, and he has taken part in numerous academic activities also. He has written so many books and articles. So it is very appropriate that today a lecture is being organized by Brihanmaharashtra Parishad in honor of Dr. Dhavalikar. And Dr. Paddayya is also a great archaeologist, and he was closely associated with Dr. Dhavalikar, and we expect a lot of information from him, and therefore I very much appreciate the organization of this program. And I request Dr. Paddayya to speak on various activities of Dr. Dhavalikar and also about his contribution to the subject, namely archaeology. Thank you very much.
I feel very privileged to introduce Professor K. Padayya, today's lecturer. Professor K. Padayya is one of the rare prehistorian in India who is well known for his work all over the world. Professor Padayya was born on 20th May 1943 in a small village in Andhra Pradesh. He got his graduation in history from Andhra University and then completed his master's degree in history in 1965. Then he came to Deccan College and he joined for PhD under Professor H.D. Sankalia and completed his PhD in 1968. His topic for a PhD was the prehistoric and historic cultures of Shorapur Doab in Karnataka. For some time, Professor Padayya was in Holland for doing postdoctoral research. Then he came back to India in 1972 and joined as a lecturer. Then for a very long time he was in Deccan College and he retired as a professor and the director of Deccan College. Even after his retirement, he is still continuing his work and he is at present Professor Emeritus at Deccan College today. For about 2 decades, Professor Padayya he devoted his time in Hunsgi and Baijba basins in Karnataka, and his main interests were and are the Acheulean culture of prehistory as well as the Neolithic culture in South India. He is known for his work both in Acheulean in South India as well as Neolithic in South India. He worked at the site of Hunsgi, Yediyapur and Isampur and did extensive work for several years. Because of his work, which was so intensive, we could understand what was a prehistoric life during the period of Acheulean in South India. He also excavated 2 Neolithic sites, one called Kodekal and Budihal, and this work also has brought to notice very different dimensions of Neolithic culture in South India. I was very fortunate to work with him at the site of Budihal, and therefore I understand what qualities this person has in the field. In fact, Professor Paddayya is a rare combination of a theoretician and a field worker. Commonly it is felt that those who are not good in field, they go to theory, but it is not so. Professor Paddayya, right from beginning, was attracted towards theoretical developments in archaeology. Particularly after 1950s, what happened in archaeology is that a branch of theory called new archaeology emerged, and Professor Paddayya was attracted to that. He studied it thoroughly He also interacted with those proponents of new archaeology, such as Louis Binford and many others. He got them here and uh, conducted workshops for Indian scholars. He also wrote books about new archaeology. Not just he was practicing, but he also worked and wrote books on new archaeology, such as New Archaeology and Aftermath, which was written in 1990. It is still considered as a milestone in Indian theoretical developments. Professor Paddayya has worked extensively in field, and therefore what he argues in his theoretical foundations is well justified, and everybody gets attracted to that because of his vast experience in the field. He always insisted that Indian archaeology should increase the scope, go to varied dimensions, and therefore he brought into Indian archaeology a topic called site formation processes. Because often those who do not understand archaeology do not understand that archaeological sites are formed. There are various factors which destroy the sites, there are various factors which modify the evidence, and therefore understanding how a site was formed is so crucial, which was not taught in Indian archaeology till Professor Padayya introduced. And not only that he introduced, but he also conducted a seminar, a workshop on site formation processes, and published the books. Recently he has published a book called Essays in History of Archaeology in 2013 and Revitalizing Indian Archaeology in 2016. These two books tell a story of a prehistorian, an archaeologist, and a theoretician giving actually what should be done in Indian archaeology and his thoughts about what could be done for future. Professor Padayya is always very indebted to his teachers, particularly his teacher, Professor H.D. Sankaria, is almost like a god to him, and he speaks always great about him. Of course, Professor H.D. Sankaria was a great archaeologist. Also, there was another archaeologist and anthropologist, Professor Iravati Karve in Deccan College. He conducted seminars on the occasion of the birth centenaries of both Professor Sankaria and Professor Iravati Karve, and also published them immediately. This is one of the qualities that he doesn't keep anything pending for publication. Again, I had a chance to work with him for both these volumes as assisting him in editing process, and which was a learning experience for me of how to edit carefully and technically. He has published, of course, more than 100 papers in various international journals, more than dozens of books. He was a member of the Indian Council of Historical Research from 2005 to 2011. He is also active in various committees in central government, in the Archaeological Survey of India and many other such committees. He has received many honors and awards. He was Fulbright Fellow in America for twice, 1986 and 1999. He was also awarded Rakhardas Banerjee Medal by Bangiya Sahitya Parishad from Kolkata. The Society for Antiquaries, which is there in London, has given him a honorary fellowship in 2011. And to honor the work that he has done, basic work that he has done, Government of India, President of India honored him with Padma Shri in 2012. In all, we are very fortunate to have a person of this caliber of Professor Padayya to talk to us, who has devoted all his life to archaeology, like his teacher, Professor H.D. Sankaria.
Namaskar, friends. I am very happy to join all of you today to pay our respectful homage to the memory of Professor Madhukar Keshav Dhavalikar. And by all standards, Professor Dhavalikar was one of the outstanding spokesmen of ancient Indian history, culture and archaeology in the post-independence period. And Professor Dhawalikar's achievements are in many ways unique, particularly considering that he came from an ordinary middle class family of Deccan, but rose to the highest levels in the academic world, such that he is remembered even till today, both in India and outside India. Not merely that, he was awarded lifetime achievement prize at the hands of the erstwhile Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh. And he was awarded, he was given another distinguishing national award, that is Padma Shri, by the President of India in 2011. So, what I mean to say, Dr. Dhawalikar's academic journey is indeed a good example of rise from rags to riches. See. And for those of you who may not be fully aware of the life career of Professor Dhavalikar, I might mention very briefly that he was born in 1930 and he died in 2018 on March 27, 2018 at the ripe age of 88 years. And he did his graduation in Prachyavidya College, if I remember correctly, Pune. And then he was looking for a job and he was employed for a little while for some typing work in Gokul Institute. And then he became in charge librarian of the Pune Circle of Archaeological Survey of India, at that time headed by one Mr. V.D. Krishnaswamy. And Krishnaswamy recognized the merits of Dhavalikar and he encouraged him to pursue higher education. And very soon, the Pune headquarters of ASI branch was shifted to Aurangabad, and Dhavalikar also had to shift to Aurangabad. But then, the essay there, the late Mr. Ramesh Deshpande took him under his wings, and there Dhawalikar's academic career really started, and he became an excellent student for MA degree in Pune University, Deccan College, Pune University, and he passed his MA degree in 1958 with first class first. See, and then of course, as part of ASI work, he was participating in ASI excavations, which Deshpande was conducting at Bahal, Prakashi, and Daivabad, other sites in North Maharashtra. But then Dhavalikar continued his academic career and he registered for his PhD degree with Professor Sankalya as his guide, and he submitted his degree in 1964, and very soon, thanks to the PhD degree in his pocket, he was employed, he was able to shift from ASI to a university. He became lecturer in Nagpur University. That was just for 2 years till 67, and then he came to Deccan College, but on the faculty as a reader in ancient Indian history and culture. That was in 1967, when I was sort of in the advanced stage of my PhD research. So our interaction commenced. And then he was promoted as professor in 1980, professor of proto-historic and early historical archaeology. And he retired in that position in 1990, but he was also concurrently the director of the institute from 1985 till 1990. But then, of course, his interaction with the technical college continued even after his retirement. He used to come regularly, if not daily, but very regularly, once in a week or twice in a week to library and to visit some of us in the Department of Archaeology till his last days. And it was only very sad that because of pneumonia, he had to be put in ICU for about 2 weeks, and unfortunately, he was not able to communicate with us. We used to visit him in the hospital, and of course, he used to recognize us, smile at us, but we were not able to communicate with him. And that would have been very nice, if he was able to talk to us. He would have told us many more things about archaeology and his association with the institutions, people, and unfortunately, end came on 27th March 2018, and I feel sad that he passed away. I feel sad also because I went to Vaikund, where his cremation took place, just 4 or 5 minutes late, and already he was cremated. And I feel sorry even till today that I was not there at the time of his cremation. And I would like to say that my association with Professor Dhavalikar commenced in 1967 when I was doing my PhD here, and then I was taken on the faculty in 1972, and our interaction association became much more intense and closer year by year, and almost every day we used to meet whether in the veranda or in his room or in my room or in the library, and discuss about this or that aspect of archaeology, particularly recent developments in archaeological theory and methodology, and it was very lively interaction, and I am very happy to say that this interaction continued even after he retired, and wherever he used to come to college after retirement, once or twice in a week, he made it a point to visit not merely the library, but he used to come to the department, and it was always a pleasant surprise to see him in my room. He used to knock at my door, "Hello, Gauru, how are you?" Gauru is the honor in Telugu, like G in the Hindi, you see. So it was, I remember all those wonderful and lively occasions of interaction and association with him. And although he is physically no more with us, but as with our Guruji, Professor Sankalia, and Professor S.P. Dev, and Professor B.N. Mishra, and my other senior colleague Emil Kumurthy, and of course my other teachers. Professor Dhavalikar was not exactly my teacher, not formally speaking, but he was a teacher, guide by proxy. Professor Marty was my teacher, Shobhita Bokle Madam was my teacher, Dr. Ansari was my teacher. All these, people are, unfortunately, they are no longer with us, but not a day passes, even till today, when I remember some aspect or some, interaction or the other with one or more of them. And that is how we see. Sometimes I miss their presence, the interaction, but still the very feeling of remembering their interaction with them makes me alive, and that is how we see. I am able to, continue to do some work in archaeology thanks to their inspiration and their guidance. Yeah. Now, when coming to Professor Dhawalikar's contribution to Indology in the widest sense, I think there are many more things which could be. There are many things which could be, said. Probably one can give a series of lectures because his contributions touch almost every branch of Indology. And what we say, ancient Indian history, ancient Indian culture and archaeology proper, and various sub-branches within these major branches. And he was a wholesome Indologist, very much in the tradition of his guru, and our common guru, Professor H.D. Sakalia, and very much in the tradition of Professor S.B. Dev and other great Indologists. So he never differentiated, although he may have specialized in some branches, but he never felt other branches are less important. Whenever he indulged in large-scale interpretations, he was always drawing, materials from several other sources: literary sources, epigraphical sources, numismatic sources, literary sources, and of course archaeological sources. So he was a wholesome Indologist. I think this is something which is very, very important to remember in present time, because there is a lot of specialization which of course needs to be there, but then I think we should try to avoid the trend of mistaking trees for the general forest. I think this is one great message coming from the contributions of our Guruji, common Guruji, Professor Sakalia, Professor S.V. Dev, and certainly from the contributions of Professor M.K. Dhavalikar. Now, I will briefly, considering that we have limited time, I will briefly touch upon his contributions to 3 or 4 major areas in Indology. The first one is culture history, ancient Indian history, culture and archaeology. I will say, he may not have written much about political history, but he has certainly contributed, but in a very creative way, in a very fundamental way, in a very original way to culture history and what it is. Professor Sankalia, when he started the department, he already realized that for reconstructing India's culture history, Puranas are very important, epigraphical sources are important, and that is how he gave some of these, allocated some of these topics to his own students, and he was himself doing, for example, from epigraphical sources, reconstructing, historical geography and cultural ethnography. Now, this is something which is very, very innovative, and Dr. Sankalia initiated this. And then he also, started using the Puranas for reconstructing cultural history. So, and what is important, Dr. Dhavalikar added one more innovative component to the reconstruction of India's cultural history. That is use of art historical sources for reconstructing India's culture. Now, actually his PhD topic is about cultural reconstruction as could be made from the study of Ajanta paintings. Ajanta paintings, of course, are known for a long time, and a lot of publications have come. But then, this aspect has been ignored. It has not been realized that these paintings are of great artistic value, and but within these paintings there is a lot of information, which is useful for understanding the cultural history. And this is how, he was actually inspired by the work of one Codrington, a British, historian archaeologist who specialized in South Asian studies. And that is how he thought of taking up Ajanta paintings for reconstructing the cultural history of that period for his PhD thesis. And he went to Dr. Sankalia. Sir, this is the topic which I would like to work on. And Dr. Sankalia, he always appreciated good ideas and inventive ideas. He said, yes, go ahead. And then Dr. Dhavalikar completed this thesis, Ajanta, a cultural study. That is, from the study of the paintings, reconstructing various aspects of ancient India's culture, whether it is the furniture items, household items, whether it is dress items, whether it is the ornaments of various kinds, and whether it is flora, fauna, and whatever. So it's not. is not merely looking at the paintings from a religious point of view, but extracting the cultural information from the study of paintings, which was not done earlier, you see. Certainly not to the required extent. And Dr. Dhavalikar, initiated this. He added this innovative element, one more element to the study reconstruction of India's cultural history. I think this must be noted and appreciated. And then his work in study of ancient Indian culture continued even after he joined the Deccan College in 1967. After he joined Deccan College, much of his time was devoted to regular archaeology, particularly proto-historic studies. But then he did continue his work in the study of ancient Indian culture, and there is several publications of his are there. Like terracottas, you see, and what cultural information terracotta objects give, and then the Satavahana art. He has a monograph on Satavahana art. Then he has a monograph on the Hinayana caves of Western India, and then he has actually even while doing his PhD thesis on Ajanta and its importance for reconstructing cultural history, he produced a monograph on Sanchi, a cultural study. And Sanchi, these beautiful Toradas, and then those low relief sculptures on the slabs of the boundary of the stupa, and so much of cultural information. So actually, even before completing his thesis on Ajanta, he wrote a monograph on Sanchi, a cultural study. See, a great contribution, another great contribution to the study of India's cultural history. And so, till the end, he continued his first pursuit, that is study of India's culture and cultural history. And his, I think, Ganesha, the Lord of Asia, that itself is a contribution to India's cultural history. So this pursuit continued till his end. Although after he joined the Deccan College, his major time was devoted to regular archaeology excavations and writing reports, and so that is one important contribution which Professor Dhavalikar has to his credit, which is well remembered even till today. See, the second important contribution, is in connection with archaeological theory and method, and this happened particularly after he joined the Deccan College in 1967, and Dr. Sankalia involved him in various excavations, whether it's Inamgaon or Valki or Kaita and other things. And also around this time, in late 60s and early 70s, a lot of developments were happening across the world, particularly in the domain of archaeological theory and method. And this was the period when the so-called new archaeology or processual archaeology developed by David Clark of Cambridge University, the late David Clark of Cambridge University, and Professor Lewis Whitford of America, just coming up. And Dr. Sankalia was taking some interest. And Dr. Dhavalikar also started testing some of the beauties of this new archaeology, and he already started using some of these ideas of new archaeology, the anthropological approach, ecological approach, circular patterns, in his work on, in respect of his excavations at his joint excavations at Inamgaon and Valki and Kaute and Kaita in Madhya Pradesh. And what is important, already from the beginning of 70s, he already started writing some small, he did not write a book on new archaeology, but he already started writing some important articles and publishing them in Puratattva and Man and Environment and elsewhere, saying, that this is the great development in archaeology across the globe, and Indian archaeology cannot remain oblivious of these developments, and we must we must, look at it carefully and take whatever is applicable in our case. And he was advocating the use of new archaeology ideas, for the good of Indian archaeology. That is how these articles are very, very important. Actually, he could have collected all of them and published them as a book, but probably he was very busy with other things. Yeah, see. But anyway, what is important, not merely advocating this, he was using these ideas in his own work in connection with excavations at Viramgaon or Kaute or Walki or and Daimabad. Daimabad, of course, was excavated by others, but then he was interpreting the evidence from sites excavated by others also from these new points of view. And so he really started, believing that many of the ideas of new archaeology are indeed very, very relevant, and they are absolutely essential for the development of Indian archaeology. As I said, in 2019, in Puratattva volume 49, I wrote a comprehensive estimate of Dr. Dhawalikar's contribution to Indian archaeology, M.K. Dhavalikar, revitalization of Indian archaeology. So, he did not use the word revitalize, but he thought, some of these ideas must be used for the good of Indian archaeology. See, and that's how these articles, were published. And then, as an extension of these articles, this is an important development in post-independence archaeology. He organized one All India refresher course in new archaeology for 4 weeks in May, June 1986, and this was a great success and a great development in post-independence archaeology, in the sense that some of the leading exponents of new approaches in history and archaeology were there as resource persons, and as participants. There were some 35 young people from universities, from ASI, state departments, museums, and it was summertime, but this the refresher course was a tremendous success, and one of the key resource persons was Lewis Binford himself. See, and Dr. Dhavalikar found time, found money, raised resources to invite Professor Lewis Binford himself, one of the founders of new archaeology. And Lewis Binford was here for during this period, and he gave something like half a dozen lectures, and these were heard with rapt attention. Our lecture hall was full. Sometimes people were sitting in the window sills or standing near the door, and and Professor Romila Thapar was another key resource persons. And there was also one Professor R. Sundararajan, head of the Department of Philosophy in Pune University, and he gave some lectures about philosophy of science and how it is relevant to understand the recent developments in archaeological theory and method. And like this, and there were other resource persons both from Deccan College and from outside. But what I want to say that this refresher course which Dr. Dhavalikar organized was meant for sharing the ideas of new archaeology for the benefit of one and all across the country. So very much in the tradition of Deccan College, he did not want to, confine his ideas to himself, but he wanted to share these ideas. He wanted to improve the overall status of Indian archaeology. He wanted, in other words, this is my phrase, he wanted to revitalize Indian archaeology. And this refresher course was indeed a great success. It was a great step towards the revitalization of Indian archaeology. So this is his major contribution, that is in terms of archaeological theory and method. Now there is a third major contribution. This third major contribution now concerns his own field researches, field investigations, excavations, explorations in Indian proto-history. And right from the moment he joined Deccan College in 1967, Dr. Sankalya wanted him to join, he wanted Dr. Dhavalikar to join him in his excavations at Binamgaon and other places, and then Dr. Sankalya of course retired in 1973, but then Dr. Dhavalikar continued these excavations at Inamgaon. See, the Inamgaon project is a major excavation project in post-independence archaeology in the whole country. See, and jointly with Dr. Ansari, these were continued even after Dr. Sankalya's retirement in 1973 up to almost up to 1980. See, and then he took up excavations at Kavate, Valki, and then of course Kaida, and then he excavated the Harappan sites of Kuntasi and Prabhas Patan, Gujarat, and so I mean, see, the important thing is, there were other people excavating, Neolithic Chalcolithic sites in other parts of the country. There was no doubt, see, and actually, see, the whole story is like this. When Sir Mortimer Wheeler, went back to England as he relinquished his job as the Director General. So he gave one, mantra. See, he said, see, there is a dark age in Indian, history, and that dark age is between the end of the Harappan civilization and the beginning of the historical period, something like 3rd century, 4th century BC, somewhere. About a period of 1 millennium, 1000 years. See, there is not much that is known archaeologically. He said this is dark age, and now India has got independence. There are good archaeologists now. They must make efforts to fill up this gap, this dark age, by way of undertaking various excavations in various regions. And the most important thing is that in every region, regional culture sequences must be built up, like railway timetables, see, culture. So that was his mantra, and this was very, very well accepted by Indian archaeologists, whether it is ASI, universities or state departments, and a lot of excavations were done in different parts of the country. Culture sequences were created, and of course the Deccan region, even before Wheeler gave mantra, Dr. Sankalya was doing it. Nevasa excavations were undertaken, and Nasik, Jorwe, and see a lot of. So the point is, by 1970s, mid-70s, lot of data about what we call the proto-historic period, Neolithic, Chalcolithic, communities spreading, let us say, between the middle of the 3rd millennium BC and up to the beginning of the historical period, middle of the 1st millennium BC, let us say, matter of something like 2000 years. Lot of data, lot of excavations, lot of data, lot of reports, lot of research publications, lot of information about pottery, lot of information about stone tools, about stratigraphy, and lot of but see, the point is that not much effort at an integrated reconstruction of these Chalcolithic or proto-historic cultures was done. See, everyone was very happy. Oh, I have excavated this site. This is the stratigraphy. This is the culture sequence. This is pottery from Jorwe phase, or Kaita phase, or but no one was. See, is a sort of lot of trees, but people are not able to look at them together and understand what is the general nature of the forest. See, this is. I'll give you one other example. I used to say this, give this analogy in classroom lectures. Just like a chair. See, chair has many components. There are legs, 3 or 4 legs. There is a backrest. There is a handrest. There is a sitting plank. But if these are all there, see, scattered here and there. Does it make a chair? Do they make a chair? See, a chair is a composite entity. See, it is meaningful. See, only when these parts are brought together, not merely brought together, but when they are brought together in their respective places, then it makes a meaningful chair. So, like this, if you apply this analogy to the data, huge, tons and tons of data available about proto-historic sites in the country. And there were a lot of data, all scattered here and there, but you see, still no good picture of the life ways of the people. And it is here Dr. Dhawalikar's fundamental contribution comes into the picture, you see, because he was already, tuned to the ideas of new archaeology, that we must be able to, we as archaeologists will gather antiquarian remains, but we should be able to, see the story behind. We should be able to reconstruct the histories of these antiquarian remains. We should be able to reconstruct, in other words, again, cultural history. And for this purpose, we need help, some clues from geography. We need some clues from geology. We need some clues from soil sciences. We need some clues from biological sciences. We need some clues from ethnography. And so he was familiarizing himself with information from various branches of knowledge. And archaeozoology, archaeobotany, and soil sciences, and drainage patterns. What is sources availability, and he brought all these new ideas and brought them, bear on the bare archaeological data, and then just as a chair becomes very meaningful and very very interesting and good to look at when all the parts are brought together and assembled in their respective places, when all these new ideas are brought together and they are made to with these ideas, antiquarian remains are made to tell their stories, and then reconstruction started. And that it is here. For example, coming to Deccan itself. Thanks to the work of Dr. Paddayya and others, Dr. Dev and others, a lot of information was available, site reports and articles, information about Jorwe pottery, Mandava pottery, and a lot of these about stone tools and animal bones. But it was Dr. Dhavalikar, with this small book. This is the title of this book, The First Farmers of the Deccan. This is based on the two memorial lectures which he delivered in the Asiatic Society in Mumbai in memory of Aranda Kumaraswamy. And these were published as a small book in 1988. Now I will tell you, I will give an analogy. And Mahatma Gandhi, as part of his freedom, struggle, like other, freedom fighters, he was going right across the country, and he was in Kerala, and somewhere, and Kerala, of course, all Indians are very fond of gold and ornament, but Kerala probably, in some parts, they are certainly more fond of gold. So he wanted to tell them, okay, you can have things, but then, so he said he was giving references to some of the Upanishads. I forget the name of the correct Upanishad, whether it was Kathopanishad or Isopanishad. He was making a reference to this. He said, it doesn't matter, God forbid, but it doesn't matter if all our ancient Indian texts are lost in fire. But if this particular Upanishad is saved, then Indian thought is very safe. Now, why this Upanishad, why this particular Upanishad, Isopanishad or Kathopanishad? He said, this Upanishad has two fundamental, concepts. One is aparigraha, non-possessiveness. Non-possessiveness and selfless service. He was, attracted by these two concepts. He said, this is the real essence of Indian thought and Indian philosophy. And so I would say, all our reports, articles, site reports and all information, data about Deccan Chalcolithic, even if we forget for a while, it's not there. But if this book is there, I think, one will have obtained a wonderful, a very, meaningful understanding of what the Deccan Chalcolithic cultures are. this is the greatness and the importance of this book, and how this has arisen, because Dr. Dhavalikar was not merely an excavator, not merely excavated a lot of data. He published, for example, Inamgaon reports, there are published reports of Kundasi, Kaita, but he went, unlike most of the experts in Indian proto-history, he went one step ahead, used these theoretical ideas and brought them to bear upon the bare antiquary remains and made them tell their stories. And he was able to capture the various aspects of the Deccan Chalcolithic cultures, whether it's about their, how sites are distributed along the rivers or the tributary streams, or there is a site hierarchy, there are regional centers, there are villages, there are hamlets, there are farmsteads, and within the settlement, for example, in Amgam, there is a regular settlement pattern. Outside peripheral areas are occupied by various these artisans, and the inner areas are occupied by the regular farmers, and within this inner area there is a chieftain and his elaborate houses. All this reconstruction, and then belief systems of the Chalcolithic people, and then their agro-pastoral economy, and then this is for the first time you are able to get a comprehensive reconstruction of the total life way of the Deccan Chalcolithic cultures, and that is I think something very remarkable. And this particular approach has not been followed by most of, even till today, it is yet to be adopted by most of the people who specialize in Indian proto-history. They are very happy to dig a big site. Oh, I have excavated, produced very nice, the reports, very glossy pictures, and you see some satellite imageries. But then one wants to understand, the nature of the culture itself. One will have to really, scratch one's head. But this is of tremendous importance, and it is a very small publication, but full of life. It has given a new dimension to Indian proto-history. It has revitalized Indian proto-history. So this is his third major contribution to Indian archaeology. Now, of course, he has commented on other aspects of Indian archaeology. For example, the Aryan problem. This Aryan problem is an age-old, problem, and so many, interpretations have been, made, and claiming that they are indigenous to India. Again, this theory has come back. It's being insisted that Aryans are indigenous to India, and then of course, right from Sir William Jones, there have been theories that Aryan culture is part of larger Indo-European culture, and then Aryans have been brought from Turkey. Some scholars have been brought from different parts of Central Asia, and Carpathian mountains, and lot of views, and this Aryan origins problem has been called chase of a wild goose. You can't it's there, and you can't find but Dr. Dhavalikar made his own chase, and he said, yes, I can also, because he had very good knowledge of literature, including the ancient literature, Sanskrit. He was not a Sanskrit, but certainly he had some good knowledge of Sanskrit language. He was able to quote some of the sources, and then good knowledge of archaeology, Indian archaeology, and even outside archaeology. Even West Asian archaeology, Central Asian archaeology, and of course he was he was aware of the general, process regarding interpretation of general issues like origins. So with the help of these various approaches, he wrote this book. I think it was published, The Aryans, Myth and Archaeology, in 2007. And I think there are two, but I think the major one came in 2007. And in this, you see, wonderful to read this. You see, again, see, we may or we may not accept his views. See, many of these views, many of these problems are very general. See, it's very difficult to come to a final established answer. But then, see, we must appreciate that Dr. Dhavalikar had the guts, had the creative abilities, to pull together these various strands of data and to put forward his own interpretation. I think it is here we must again pay our tribute to his memory. Now, what is his view? See, he ultimately traces Aryans to Central Asia. He says that in the region of Altai Dug mountains in Kazakhstan, there were flourishing Mesolithic groups. But then climate became dry, and they had to travel southwards, and finally they landed in the present region of Afghanistan. See, this is Aryano region, the old name for the region, and there they sort of shifted from hunting gathering to agro-pastoral way of life, and then they did not stop there. They started proceeding further east, and they landed in the greater Indus Valley, and already there were flourishing Chalcolithic proto-historic cultures to sites like Mehergarh and Kiligul Muhammad, but these landed, and finally they crossed even the Indus Valley, and they came in the 4th millennium BC. They already came into the Saraswati Valley, which is now dried up river Gagar channel. You see, the lower reaches of the ancient Saraswati Valley, and that is how the culture called Hakra culture came, and eventually this Hakra culture developed into the early Harappan, and then finally into the mature Harappan. See, this was somewhere in the 3rd millennium of BC going on. But then all of a sudden, there were some problems. There were some problems of decline in trade activities. There was arid climate, and also the head region of Saraswati was captured by Jamuna, and then all this Himalayan drainage which was coming into the Saraswati stopped. So eventually, Saraswati became dry. And these Harappan groups had a lot of problems, and only some of them survived. They migrated to the upper part of the Saraswati river, and that is what is called the late Harappan period. And it is in this late Harappan period, somewhere in the early half of the 2nd millennium BC, let us say from 2000 BC to something like 1500 BC, and it was during this period Rigvedic civilization appeared, and the Harappans were no longer urbanized. They became now sort of general adopted agro-pastoral way of life, and they were continuing with their things, and also because the climate became a bit dry, and problems of some problems arose because of this dry climate, and he says that whenever societies are confronted with the basic problems of life, and they tend to become philosophical, and it was out of this philosophical mood, the Vedic compositions came up, and Sanskrit language also came up in this period, and the Vedas came up, and that's the view. And then it doesn't stop there. So he equates the Rigvedic civilization with the late Harappan phase of the Harappan culture, which happened in the upper part of the ancient Saraswati river. He says that eventually, some of the groups proceeded further east, Ganga Valley, and then some of them proceeded even further south. He says that even Maharashtra is there. I don't believe in this, but anyway, this is his view. But not merely that, he says some of these groups, they traveled, further west, and he says up to Egypt, up to, Greece, up to Turkey, and up to Iraq and Ethiopia, and, so he says this is the, Aryan diaspora, you see, and, so this is his interpretation, and I don't know, how much of it we can take, but I think we must appreciate that Dr. Dhavalikar had this daring attitude of drawing information, raw materials from various sources and attempting his own, his own chase of the wild goose. And I think some aspects of his interpretation I personally find very appealing, you see. But particularly this what he calls Aryan diaspora, that the Harappan, the late Harappan culture, equal to agriculture. You see, Aryan culture certainly spread eastwards and southwards. But then this equation of Aryan culture with the late Harappan, in my view, is a great problem. And what is the late Harappan? I think this is a highly debatable issue in Indian archaeology. Unfortunately, people, not merely Dhavalikar, but most of the archaeologists, they use this late Harappan in a very, very loose way. But I think it is an issue which can be debated upon. So anyway, that is. But you see, interpretation is always very easy. But we must again pay tribute to the originality, to the creative mind abilities of Dhavalikar. And he, out of these efforts, he published a book on the Aryan problem. And see how many Indian archaeologists have been able to do this? I think it is here again, his contributions stand out, you see. And then, other things, his book, Ganesha, I find it very, not only, that particular book, Ganesha, the Lord of Asia, right, 2016 it came, and, very fascinating. He was able to collect information from various sources, photographs are beautiful, but that approach I find is very laudable and very, creative. There is again creativity here. If I remember it correctly, he says that, this Ganesha, this elephant-headed god, this elephant was the totem animal of this tribe, Hastikas, somewhere in the Gandhara region, present day, Pakistan region. Then it became Gana, then it became Ganesha, then it became Mahaganesha, and then it became cult, deity. And so, what he's telling, generally in the Indian conception, gods are created. They are Swayambhus. And but here we see Dr. Dhavalikar is giving an evolutionary interpretation of the origins and development of Ganesha as a deity. This is something very, very interesting, So, he is not treating Ganesha as a Swayambhu. All of a sudden, somebody created or the deity himself appeared. But it is actually, a totem animal, then it proved to be very interesting, very important. Then it became sort of, sort of a little cult figure, it became Gana, and then Ganesha, regularity, and Mahaganesha, and then finally, This is something I think, how gods are. I remember this correction, I remember this beautiful book of God and Child, Man Makes Himself, great publication. So actually, I sometimes wonder, God and Child could have, made the title a little more elaborate. He could have even said, if you read the text, I'm sure you will agree with me. He could have even made the title more elaborate. Man makes himself, man also makes gods. What are all these gods, goddesses? I think every one of us in our heart of hearts we know that these are not created somewhere. These are our creations. And of course, Oriental regions like India are particularly well known You see, and this process has not stopped. It is still going on. You see, either new gods or variations of gods. For example, during the Ganesh festival, you see, Ganesh, takes the form of Lokamanya Tilak. You see, this also is another view. You see, so this creativity, wonderful. You see, it is to be accepted and appreciated. But then, you see, in terms of academic things, you see, what is to be accepted, what is not to be accepted, what is this? So I think it is here one has to be very careful, and I think I personally feel this evolutionary, interpretation of the development of deities is a very important contribution, and this can be adopted to explain the origins of many of our deities. See, in fact, he has, I think, written one article, also said by R.C. Dere and others, that Vitoba of Bhandarkar, originally it was a pastoral god, you see, and then drafted into Hindu pantheon, and then, you see, given all the attributes of a great deity, you see, and of course we treat him. And somewhere I read that even, you see, Lord, Jagannath of Puri is also, it appears originally it was a tribal deity of the Konds. Konds are an important tribe in Orissa, and it appears the same thing with this Ayyappa of Sabarimala in Kerala. You see, and Ayyappa originally it was a tribal deity. And I think, you see, in terms of process, India has been a great, theatre where lots of, interesting process of amalgamation, assimilation, and, big fish, trying to absorb the smaller fish, and, sometimes, the smaller fish, still retaining its identity, sometimes losing its, and something like, so, our culture is, it appears, our religion and our culture in general is a mosaic. It's not just, it is a mosaic, so many elements have come in, and it's intricate, fabric, and I think from this point of view, this book on Ganesha by Dr. Dhavalikar is really amazing, and this kind of approach can be used by younger people, for understanding the evolution of other major deities, in different parts of India. I think, here again, Dr. Dhawalikar's work stands out really very, very prominently. And of course, there are others. And Dr. Dhavalikar also, we must salute him also for giving us a number of not merely work on Ganesha or Chalcolithic cultures, first form, but also several works of synthesis. And that's how we see. His book Proto-History of India, Historical Archaeology of India, and then as part of Indian History Congress, he edited one volume, Prehistory of India. And that's a beautiful. He collected articles right from Lower Paleolithic to beautiful publication. These are helpful to students and scholars. So and also we see others. And environment and culture, which Bhandarkar Institute published. And in fact, this is another major contribution of Dr. Dhavalikar. Understanding ancient cultures of India, whether of prehistoric period or proto-historic or even historical period, with reference to environmental influences. And he sometimes went to the extremes. But sometimes I used to joke with him, you are a determinist, environmental determinist. He says, yes, I am a determinist. But the point is, nobody can ignore the influence of environment on human cultures. And, human cultures, human societies do not live in mid-air. They have to live concretely on the surface of the earth, which means, they have to make use of the various landscape features. So, geography very much. You see, geography gives the general, you see, direction, and then different communities, different areas adjust their life ways in tune with the geographical features of that particular region. So I used to argue with him, sir, we are being a determinist, whereas actually the processes are, you see, is a more geographical, you see, I mean, possibilism. You see, that, different, so sometimes he was, you see, he was telling, I mean, you see, the wet climate, so cultures come. So there was wet climate, Mesolithic cultures were flourishing. There was wet climate, so early Harappan was flourishing, and good climate, so Magadhan ascendancy, and then good climate, Harappa, I mean Gupta culture, but climate became very post-Gupta period, all of a sudden problems, you see, and climate became arid in late Jorwe, so I mean Jorwe culture collapsed, it became, you see, people, I mean, you see, environment is very, see, certainly, see, it's not uniform, but then human communities are very inventive. See, they are able to adjust themselves. See, Corona has posed, tremendous problems to the whole of humanity. But it's not that the whole humanity is extinct. See, we are able to understand, adapt ourselves and dealing with it. But likewise, right from the dim beginnings of humanity, people have been, some of them became extinct, no doubt about that, I mean, died, but they have been able to adjust themselves, you see, and cope up with it. So this is the process of what anthropologists call adaptation, see, and Dr. Dhavalikar used to argue, see, yes, adaptation is there, but, major climatic phases means, major problems. So sometimes he was using very, sensation-making observations, you see, arid climate set in, and Jorwe culture, came to a grinding halt. You see, so I used to say that these are, more like journalistic writings. So we used to argue, but you see, it was a very lively debate. You see, so this, so his contribution in terms of environment and its influence on human cultures is another major contribution. Not most of the Indian archaeologists are not even aware of it. You see, and so I think these are the fundamental contributions, and see, I will take another 5 minutes and close it. I would like to conclude, see, by making 2 or 3 general observations. See, one is Dr. Dhavalikar. See, as probably you would have, got the impression, Dr. Dhawalikar's mind was an alert mind. It was keen intellect, full of curiosity to know things, and he would not, his mind would not accept anything, see, unless he looks at the pros and cons. See, I mean, he will not just blindly, accept any argument or any interpretation. He was, and his mind was dynamic, active at all times, and very critical, and see, so that is, I think, very, alert mind, ever ready to look at new information, absorb new ideas, and see, and look at the old evidence, and then look for new data. So this alertness of the mind, and of course he was very prolific in writings, and sometimes we used to joke, how see, there is nothing great. You say, I am not doing anything great. This is all because of the inspiration which we got from our Guruji, Prof. Sankalia. I said, what is it? See, Dr. Sankalia used to advise his students and his colleagues, see, you have to write. At least write 1 page a day. Never stop. So Dr. Dhavalikar used to, he repeated this a number of occasions. In other words, he paid tribute to his Guruji for inspiring him in this writing process, you see. So that was, you see. So, like this, you see, another great attribute of Dr. Dhavalikar, in spite of his high scholarship, and you see, he was always humble. He was always remembering his teachers and elders. Many occasions, whether it was Emeritus or even V.T. Krishnaswamy. You see, Krishnaswamy was a pre-historian, see, and he was his boss in Pune, but he was remembering. You see, it was very nice. He was encouraging me, and he said, you should do BA, you see, externally, and you see, and then later on Emeritus encouraged him to do PhD, and then Yego, B.B. Lal, B.K. Thapar, Ram Mukti, and See, so Dr. Dhavalikar never forgot his elders and his teachers. This is one important thing which our youngsters should remember. There is a tendency, nowadays, sometimes I feel that if one, completed his PhD, gave, this current presentation declared, and one feels, that he has already climbed Mount Everest. See? So but this year, Dr. Dhavalikar never gave up till probably in the period, the pneumonia period where he was in ICU, probably did not give up. But otherwise, I think even before being taken to hospital, he must have been toying with some idea, or he must have been. In fact, I am told he completed his autobiography in Marathi. Probably he was doing it, and then this pneumonia came at them, So, I don't know, I would like to know whether, that has been published or not, and it should be published, So, I think, this is, very much in the traditions set by our Guruji, Professor Sankalia. And then another important and very alert mind, and as I said, and, sharp intellect, and you would read, any publication very carefully. And I will give you one great example, of his alertness of mind. He was, after he joined the Deccan College in 67, 68 or 69, for some purpose he was reading this Brahmagiri report of Wheeler. That great site in Karnataka, which Wheeler excavated Neolithic, megalithic and early historic sequence. And he was looking at, the description of some of the iron implements, which were found in the megalithic levels. And Wheeler called one piece, chopper. Dr. Dhavalikar looked at it and he was not convinced with this. So he said, no, this can't be a chopper. This is more a plowshare, plowshare. The wooden plow, at the end there is a tip, iron tip, so that it gets into the. So, and he was convinced, he looked at the present day things and then, it is a plowshare, and he wrote a 2-page article, 2-page note, and he showed it to Dr. Sankalia. I was very much a part of this. So he told me, call it chopper, but I don't think it's chopper, it is. I also agreed with him, because I come from a farmer's family. I know what a plow is, and every plow has an iron, share. So he wrote 2 or 3-page note, he gave it to Dr. Sankalia. Dr. Sankalia also was very pleased, and he said, yes. So Dr. Dhavalikar wanted Dr. Sankalia to publish it in Technical College Bulletin. Dr. Sankalia, what he did? He sent it to Wheeler. And Wheeler read it and reread it, and he said, yes, I am wrong. Dhavalikar is right. So he sent it to Bill Daly, a editor of Antiquity, and it was published in Antiquity. See, alertness of mind. And there are other instances also, But another important thing, again, which is to be remembered by other people, Dr. Dhavalikar, again, adopted this critical comparative approach of looking at data, his own publications, his own writings, and while assessing, reading and assessing other people's contributions. Very critical, very objective approach, and not aligning one's views, to find favor with a particular, social interpretation or religious interpretation or political interpretation. These days, heritage things are being, used unnecessary things, creating a lot of complications. Not exactly in academic way. You want to get some favor, from some, particular, power in, there, and you would like to, interpret evidence, to tune with, so that we can please the political powers and that get. Dr. Dhavalikar was very clear in his mind. He was purely academic in his approach. He would weigh all kinds of evidence, and his own interpretations were never aligned to please with any particular sectarian interpretation, religious or political or social interpretation. And I think this is, in fact, this was Dr. Dhavalikar, this objective, critical, comparative approach to historical data, archaeological data interpretation is very much a part of the Deccan College tradition. And this tradition was set in motion already in the later part of the 19th century by Sir Ramakrishna Gopal Bhandarkar. And I refer particularly youngsters, I advise them, they should read his article of 1888, the critical, comparative and historical approach to Sanskrit learning, philology and archaeology. And actually, here for the first time, someone in modern academic history of India, someone is advocating the use of the canons of the scientific method in the entire academic history of modern India, not merely in Indology. See, this is, unfortunately, this article has not been, accessed by people, see, and I am trying to create awareness among the younger people. I think so. This article of Bhandarkar in 1888 laid the foundations of research methodology in all academic disciplines in the whole country. And I think the truth of my statement will be, you will appreciate only when you read this article. See, and this is there, republished in the collected works of R.G. Bhandarkar, published by, I think in volume 1 only, see, 1933. And it is a great piece of writing, and of course, R.G. Bhandarkar wrote so many other things, but so far as methodology, research methodology is concerned, it is, the first major attempt to introduce research methodology in the country in all the disciplines. See, I think this is, and whether it was S.M. Katre, whether it was Iravati Karve Madam, whether it was Dr. Sankalia, whether it was Ashok Velkar, whether it was, others, and Dr. Dhavalikar, and of course, even Vien Mishra, probably I also belong to that. See, we have appreciated this trend, and we are pure academics, and we will look at all points of view. We will not align ourselves with this rightist approach or leftist, and leftist. There are so many sub-approaches, but see, we are pure academicians. Whatever is truth, we will say. See, and this not to please or displease any particular social group, religious group, or a political group. And I think if one reads Dr. Dhawalikar's writings, in every writing of Dr. Dhavalikar, this attitude is reflected. See, and this is another great message coming from the contributions of Dr. Dhavalikar. And of course, his scholarship, his eminence was respected, and he received, national and international awards. And he was president of Indian History Congress, he was president of Indian Archaeological Society, he was president of Indian Prehistoric, Proto-Historic, and of course he helped Professor Deccan to organize R&D of Oriental. And then probably Dhavalikar also was one of the key persons to initiate this establishment of Brihanmaharashtra, Prachyavidya, Parishad. So he wanted to share, not just writing things, but he wanted to share his experiences, his impressions, the study of the past, the society at large, encourage younger people. And so, even in the public education also, he did his a remarkable job. Even for that, we have to remember. And of course, in English he wrote, but in Marathi also he wrote, I have not read those things. Also, number of books, you see, about what is archaeology, Maharashtra, you see, archaeology in Maharashtra, and even Indian archaeology, I am told, you see. But unfortunately, although he won the awards at national levels and he is highly respected, in the international circles, most unfortunately, in Pune, when he was alive, he did not receive the recognition he richly deserved. I am rather constrained to say that even in the Deccan College, recognition was not forthcoming. I don't know what were the reasons. I don't want to go into it. But see, I was suggesting to the authorities they could publish a memorial volume of the bulletin for him. See, when Ashok Kelkar got Padma Shri, I was the director. I took the initiative. We published a good volume of technology bulletin to commemorate Ashok Kelkar's Padma Shri. And Dhavalikar got Padma Shri. It was not even recognized. He was not even felicitated. And he got lifetime achievement award prize, from Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. That also was not celebrated here. I don't know what were the reasons, but it's never too late to recognize merit and to pay homage. See, there are other ways. See, I mean, it's not that lost is lost, not lost forever, but you can always. I would appreciate if organizations like Brihanmaharashtra, Prachyavidya, Parishad, or Bhandarkar Institute would think of bringing out a commemoration volume for Professor Dhavalikar. It would be in the fitness of things. And so far, no one, in spite of my suggestions, it has not happened here, but it can be done. I think the younger people like you, Srinand, and others would think of, bring out a good commemoration volume to pay tribute to him as a person and his scholarship. And I do hope, I'm once again thankful to the organizers of Maharashtra Prachyavidya Parishad for inviting me to deliver this lecture on the occasion of his third death anniversary. And I do hope and I do pray that this will be an annual feature in his memory. See. And with these remarks, once again, I join all of you to pay my humble and respectful homage to the memory of Professor Dhavalikar, one of my proxy teachers, one of my senior colleagues, and in a way one of my guides, and one of the greatest archaeologists of post-independence India. Thank you.